Hi, Andrea Morissette-Grazzini with WetheP. I'm here today with Dr. Teddie Potter. She's a professor at the University of Minnesota. It's just one of many roles that she plays in her extensive work as a teacher and practitioner of civic engagement, and specifically around cross-sector and interrelational work in all kinds of realms. So, welcome to you, and thank you so much, Dr. Potter.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, and feel free to call me Teddie.
Thank you. So we always like to start here. It's hard to start here because I know so many things I want to talk to you about because you're doing amazing work in so many different areas. But we do like to understand you as a real person, certainly Dr. Potter, and yet we also know that there's something very substantive that probably brought you to the place that you're at today. Your ideals, your values, those epiphany moments. So can you bring us back a little bit to, and specifically focusing on where in your background you sort of understood yourself as not only concerned about people and health, because I know that you're a nurse as well, but also how that relates to the world and you in particular.
Sure. I have always seen things connected. Ever since I was a little child, I couldn't separate out being interested in just one thing. Everything was all connected, all part of one other pieces. So it was hard for me to think about what type of career would I aim for. I went to a small college here in Minnesota and was headed down the medical path, and when I applied, he said, you've got top scores, you can easily be in med school, but have you thought of nursing? I didn't know a nurse, I didn't know what nurses did, I had no clue. And I thought, but I'm very pragmatic, I'd keep my doors open, because it was very difficult to get into nursing later. You needed to apply and be accepted into the school. So I applied, kept my options open, got accepted into the nursing program, sat in my first class kind of like, oh yeah, what's this about? And I was mesmerized. Nursing explained everything I felt about how people heal, that it's not just about what we say bugs and drugs. It's about people healing on many, many levels, many, many factors. You need to be looking at them holistically. What's their family situation, their social context, their historical past. And it all resonated. And so I never looked back. I never looked back. And I still, people will say, oh, would you have chosen another career, or would you recommend people choose another career? And I say, nursing has been the greatest career I could ever imagine.
So the sky was the limit for you, and you knew this, and that can be really overwhelming for a college student or even a high school student going, I know I'm bright, and I have all these interests, and I see how things connect. Nursing, it sort of connected it all in one career in a sense, and my sister's also a nurse practitioner, so I've often said, you know, why don't you be a doctor? And there's a part of her that wanted to be, but when she speaks with passion about nursing, she's speaking to, I think, what you're talking about. What is it about nursing that makes it different from being a different medical professional like a doctor or, you know?
That's a great question, and that's actually, I address that in the book that I just wrote, because I wanted to look at medicine, the word medicine. As long as one profession owns the word medicine, it's always going to be higher on higher on the pecking order, or higher on the order. And my work has been around leveling sort of the order and bringing us in as full partners. So I wanted to look at the word medicine. I went back and looked at the Latin. It means the art of healing. And then I looked at the Latin word for healing, and it means to make whole. So I asked, how do we make people whole? Do nurses make people whole? Do we have medicine? Absolutely. Pharmacists have medicine. Social workers have medicine. WetheP is medicine. We all have a medicine that we bring to the table. Every single one of us has a way of making our families whole, our communities whole, our organizations whole, our schools whole. And so what is it that we bring that's our unique contribution? That without us, it's missing. So I had to ask that, because nursing oftentimes is not very good. We do a little bit of everybody's work, so we end up being replaceable. People will say, well, it's not necessarily that you're there at the table, because the physicians have that covered, or the pharmacists have that covered, or the social workers can talk about the family. So what do? I had to really dig deep and unpack what is our unique contribution. And the unique contribution is nurses, for whatever reason, have a presence that is different. And when we're present with people, the stories come. And in the story is the healing. So without the patient or family or community's story at the table, healing doesn't occur. We might fix things temporarily, but we do not heal. Because the healing comes from the person or the family or the community, their story, and us all supporting them. And how we live that story forward.
Have to do with, I mean, we know if we take a certain drug that, you know, our heart will heal, or if we have a certain surgery and do maybe our PT, our knee will heal. And I'm setting you up for this. So, and what's the bubble over my head is my own experience, of course, with nursing, which I'm sure everyone has. So I had a child who was 3 months premature, very sick. And the doctors would come in and they were very systematic, which was very reassuring. They had a checklist. Did he do this? Did he do this? Did he do this? It was great, because you knew that they were covering the what was happening in his body. But they weren't doing much for me other than reassuring me that the nurses were the ones who, when I had to go home at night, had to get some sleep, they were there, and they were telling me in the morning the things that he did.
That's right.
When I was a little bit stressed and freaky, they would say a lot stressed and freaky, but we loved them. They were peeling me off the ceiling. So I think it has something to do with relationships.
Very, very much about relationships, but the type of relationship. So physicians have relationships. They want to get very quickly to the differential diagnosis. What is happening so that I can appropriately treat this situation? Fabulous. We need that. Absolutely, we need that. So your child who is 3 months old, 3 months premature, absolutely needed the most skilled diagnostician of how mature are their lungs, what's their current function, what do they need, what does this child need to survive. That's absolutely critical at the table of healing. But also critical at the table of healing is you, because without you, that's a piece of that child's success, that child's ability to thrive and survive. And so the nurse needs to be concerned about you, needs to be concerned about the temperature in the room. What's the environment like? What's going on with the environment? Is there too much noise? Is there too little stimulation? The fluids that have been ordered, are they being appropriately administered? I mean, it's this holistic container of holding this child and the parent and the grandparents and the fill in the blank as the healing occurs.
And so much of what the nurses do, in fact, I was in the hospital before he was born. We were trying to keep the impatient child in, and he made it. He lived and is doing brilliantly, but he was impatient. But I remember in the middle of the night, when I was stressed and in pain and so forth, the nurses, I remember thinking, this isn't in their job description, because they would come in, and of course they were monitoring the baby, they were monitoring me, they were administering meds to us both, you know, steroids for the baby and agents to keep the baby in me, but they would take time out of their schedule. But that, I remember thinking, as a businesswoman at the time, I'm thinking, how do you measure that?
Well, that's the difficulty in nursing, and it's been the difficulty all along, is when you said it's not in their job description. It really is. It's not in the doctor's orders or the physician's orders, but that's only a fragment of what the nurse does. That's basically carrying out somebody else's medicine. It's carrying out somebody else's description of what needs to be done. But that's a fraction of what we do as nurses. The rest is this whole piece. And so if I ignored you, it would be similar to me ignoring administering a medication. It's no less important.
Wonderful. Okay, that explains it, because I thought, gosh, these are just wonderfully caring people. Most of them were women, although I had a couple of male nurses as well. But this is part of your job, so this is a critical part of your job.
It's and I want to stop us here because the job people will right away go to, is there a checklist? Go in,
Right.
be nice,
Yeah,
serve
exactly.
water, etc. It's a part of our being. So I can go anywhere, and I don't tell people I'm a nurse. So we're
Right.
sitting next to each other on the airplane, and I may be opening a book and reading it. And before long, somebody says, you know, look at this. Is this normal? What do you think? Is this normal? Let me tell you about my son. My son is recently, and I'm called into being a nurse, even if I'm not at work.
So it's like a vocation in a
It's
sense.
very much,
And
very much.
But really
And
what you're getting at is a presence too.
it's presence, it's who we are, it's using our everything we are for the service of people.
So then let's do that. Let's take it, so you would be what Bill Doherty calls a citizen professional. Then you do your work even when you're not on the clock, so to speak,
all the
right?
time.
Let's unpack that a little bit more. Besides just in sort of casual encounters, how else do you take your work or your profession? I know you're a professor. I know you're you do all kinds of things. So how do you take your nursing presence or your vocation into the bigger world?
So I'm going to describe how I do it, but some nurses might have more boundaries of, I punch my clock in the morning and I punch my clock in the afternoon, and I don't want to necessarily be involved at the end of the day. But that being said, if they were out at Target shopping and somebody passed out, they're going to take action. If somebody really asked them, you know, how it's icy out, what's a safe way, we would think about safety and give some guidance.
Right.
So we're always thinking about safety, protection, prevention. How can we intervene if something looks like it's happening that's not healthy or good? For myself, back to everything's connected. I am involved in systems change. So when I first started nursing, I nursed the patient. And then as I went on in my career, I nursed the patient and the family. And then I went on and I nursed the community that the patient and the family live in. And then I started nursing new students. How do I groom them to be the next generation of nurses? And now I'm working with systems, whole systems. How do you intervene in the same way, presence, listening, engagement, to shift systems to a healthier place?
What have you learned as you've more opened this up to a more systems view? You always had this, and yet now it sounds like as though you've been more and more intentional about it. What have you learned in that intentionality as you've nursed the communities?
Profound respect for resilience. Once people are empowered to sit as full partners at the table, fully engaged, that their views matter, their ideas matter, their history, their past, their hopes, their dreams, when they know that matters, I, in a way, almost can just stand back and watch things happen. Just creating an environment where people don't have to fear failure, they don't have to fear that they're being judged, they don't have to be afraid that their voice is less important than others, or why do I have a right to speak. When all of that is stripped away, amazing what's possible. Amazing.
And it's less hierarchical. It's it's more partnered in a sense.
Absolutely.
With a little bit of facilitation, perhaps.
Absolutely.
A little support and coaxing.
Yep.
I know partnership thinking is also part of, in fact, you've written a book called Transforming Interprofessional Partnerships. And is this a textbook or is this a consumer available book?
It can be, we wrote it so it's accessible for all people, but it's designed as a textbook. So schools are adopting and using it, but it's very easy read. We use the nursing story as the vehicle, but you could, any profession could pick this up and go, oh, I get this. This is a framework for working the same ideas through. So
explain that. So let's take you out of your nursing, let's take that profession out of it.
Yep.
Give us a corollary in another profession.
Sure. So in this book, I work people through, first of all, historical patterns. And if you don't mind, I'll take a minute to just talk about cultural transformation theory.
Absolutely.
Cultural transformation theory is a theory that was created by Riane Eisler. She's a brilliant systems thinker and social theorist. And she wanted to know, why do some cultures orient towards harming one another, very top-down, very fear-based, and some cultures orient to be very collaborative and very are concerned about their elders and concerned about the children and concerned about the land. And she wanted to know, what is that? And so she is a macro historian, so she studied all cultures through all time. And by doing that, you start to see patterns. If you get enough data, you see patterns. If you have little data, there's not a lot of pattern to two dots that you connect.
Right.
So she had many, many dots she was connecting, and she came up with, oh my goodness, cultures, be it a culture of a family, an organization, a nation, tend to be oriented on a continuum from domination to partnership. And no one is all one way or the other way. We're somewhere in between.
Right.
The beauty of it is, once you know where you are, you can shift the dial on that.
Okay.
You have choices. So if you've grown up in a domination system, and I'll explain the two in just a minute, the tendency is to think that's all that ever exists, that's the way societies work, there's nothing I can do.
It's been done for years,
Absolutely.
so therefore it must work.
That's the only way it is. So it's important for us to see, oh no, there's an alternative story that functions very well, very high level thinking, high involvement in other places.
And high level thinking is connecting the dots with nuance, in a sense, right? So it's saying, here's the full picture. We can see the positives and the challenges.
Absolutely.
So it's not just a linear, these are all the answers. I just wanted to insert that.
So domination cultures, just if I were to quickly describe them, top down, very rigidly organized. Once you're in a certain place, you don't basically leave that place. Communication is always top down, so you don't go back up with the communication. Tends to be, in a lot of cultures, males over females, but I always warn my nursing colleagues that it's not gender-based hierarchical domination, because female nurses can treat male nurses poorly. And so we're all, the potential is there for all of us to—
Which is why it's called domination rather than masculine,
Absolutely, or patriarchy or something like that. It's just this pattern, this configuration of how an organ or a community is structured.
Right.
Children are generally on the bottom. Power and money is up here. Power is used to keep that contained, to keep everything in its place, and to maintain the status quo.
It feels secure.
If
theory,
you're in power, if you're the one in
power.
power, I can feel very insecure if you're on the bottom. Then we look at the opposite end of the continuum, which is a partnership culture, and that is where communication flows both ways, and communication is encouraged to flow both ways. Everybody's contribution is valued. Males and females are in equity. There's gender balance. And children are regarded as our elders. As far as a hierarchy, Riane's very careful to say it's not doing away with hierarchy. It's not, now we're going to make everything flat. Every organization is going to be flat. That's not the case. There's hierarchy, but it's hierarchies of actualization. So any power somebody has or influenced by the position they have, be it a parent or a teacher, or an administrator, or a CEO of a business, uses their power, instead of holding down to contain, to lift up.
In a sense, so when you're talking about actualization, you're talking about a person sort of accepting or retaining their own understanding of their power. Am I getting this right?
Absolutely.
And then they're using that power in a way that isn't, again, top down. They're using a way, understanding that if others also find their power, they're going to be better partners. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely. I often say, this is my little mantra, is we all move ahead when no one's left behind.
Right.
So we all move, the whole system moves ahead when you link arms.
But you're
and
not
move.
when you link arms. But and this is really valuable because it explains a lot of what we're trying to do with WetheP, and it's all about self-actualization.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is what it's very hard for, I think, some people to sort of understand.
Yeah.
They still get stuck in those paradigms. But self-actualization is sort of knowing where you're at right
Yes.
now. And it's almost, in my mind, not even about leaving people behind. It's about empowering people to find their way into, not to sort of scratch their way into linking arms, but to see their value as equal in different ways and yet in powerful ways.
Absolutely. And so it's the leader doesn't have to feel that they're giving their power away. When if I empower you, I just empower you.
Right.
It's not meaning anything about my power decreasing. As a matter of fact, if I empower you, you then are an ally, and we work together. So I'm more powerful,
We're both
or
better.
have more influence. We have more influence.
Right.
So it's a whole different mind shift. And once you see those two paradigms, you can actually choose them. You can see them. Now, what happened to me in nursing was I hated the paradigm in healthcare. When I first started nursing, I thought,
Doctor knows
what
best,
is
sort of.
this? I'm supposed to play dumb. I'm supposed to play I don't know anything, and you know, sort of be subservient to what somebody else says. I remember reading, a physician went in and saw a patient and came out and wrote an order in the chart, and I read it and said, nurse to remove toenails from bed. He had done foot care, and it was just like, really, really. That's come on.
So how did you address this?
Well, he had long since walked down the hall.
Right, but in
that
general.
I left the hospital system. And I went into home care where you have to operate as teams.
Right.
And hospice, you have to be in teams. That's how you function.
Why?
And
Why
there's
is-
mutual respect. Because it's an environment where one of you is at the home and they're the eyes and ears of
They're it.
everybody else.
Period.
And then you come back and you talk about how are we going to do this. This is
Right.
very complex, very complicated. And so it was a natural team environment.
And I want to get you back. I think I got you off a little bit, but it's very interesting. This is really valuable stuff. But you were talking about this continuum of domination and partnership. So give us an example. Where are we at, or where we're, tell me, the question that's really burning in my mind is, you said something very provocative. You said if you know where you're at, you can move the dial.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We're resistant to change.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I don't want us to be, but.
Yes. A big part of moving the dial is knowing you have an option, is knowing you have hope. So you can't move the dial if you believe that there's no one out there that will listen to you. You have to believe somebody will listen to me.
Right.
Now I'll find them,
Right.
and now we'll move forward. So you will have to have an alternative story, otherwise you're stuck. If you refuse to hear an alternative story, you're stuck. But if people want a different way of moving through the world, a different way of our societies working together, then we need an alternative story.
Right.
And this is an alternative story that works. And oftentimes when I speak, I give sort of an example so people can see it played out.
Exactly, yes.
So I'm going to have you pretend. You get to role play with
Oh,
me.
good. It's my
And
big acting
because
debut.
you seem like you're a very, you love learning, I'll have it be a teacher student
I
role
love it.
instead of a nurse patient role.
Perfect.
So today's the first day of class. Welcome to Education 101. You're going to be taught how to be future teachers. And but this is very, very rigorous. You're here because of your grades, and you cannot misstep once or you will not make it. This is a very, very difficult program. I want you to look at the person on your left, and I want you to look at the person on your right. Only one of you is going to graduate 4 years from now. So you have got to toe the line. You have got to be reading.
And I've gotta-
You've got to be doing your assignments. And you have got to be showing us your excellence. Why should you be the one to make it and not the other people around you? Questions are really not appropriate because to me that shows that you haven't done your work. If you ask questions, it shows me that you really haven't been studying and doing the readings that I've laid out. I am available for office hours between 10 and 10:15 on Fridays. please just watch, just know that there's nothing that bugs me more than lame excuses like you had an ill child, or you couldn't get your car started, or you had to pay an emergency rent. That doesn't cut it. If you want to be a teacher of future students, doesn't cut it. Okay? Okay. How'd you feel?
I felt like I was shrinking.
Yeah.
That's what I felt.
Yeah.
And I thought about my meeting on Friday mornings with my child's caregiver or something.
Yeah.
You know.
And do you want to learn?
What I'm doing in my mind when I'm listening is the first thing that comes to mind is, first of all, I've got to knock these two out somehow. So it's suddenly become a competition. And then I'm going, when the professor is saying you can't ask questions, I'm going, oh, if I knock them out, who am I going to collaborate with on questions? Because I'm going to have questions. And
So
then
what emotions are you feeling?
well, first of all, I'm feeling like anger. I'm feeling anger, and I'm feeling diminishment.
And maybe fear, shame, blame, all of
Maybe
those are
shame,
part of
yeah, like
domination systems.
This person is telling me I can't ask questions, and I'm a question asker.
Yeah.
So question askers must be the wrong kind of person to be.
Yep. And what kind of relationship would you have with future students?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I mean, and I have to give some context here. So I came from a family whose primarily their political beliefs, for example, very different than mine. But mine are, so I didn't reject them so much, but I was allowed to self-actualize, and bless their hearts, and thanks to them. So I am not exactly the same way. Not that they didn't do some things brilliantly, and yet, so for me personally, I probably would be very different. But I've certainly seen just the opposite, and there is a logical reason to be the opposite, because this professor is telling us something about the sociology of being a professor.
You're being socialized into the norm of this is the best way to teach. This is the way you should treat people.
Right.
So it replicates itself.
Right.
The domination replicates itself. So now we're going to go like this, and I'm going to be a partner in education. So welcome to Education 101. You are going to be the future nurses of our culture, and there isn't any role that is more important than bringing the next generation, giving knowledge to the next generation. Not any more important role. But it's really difficult, and there's going to be times that you'll think, oh my gosh, am I in the right place? Can we do this? So I want you to take a look at the person on your left, the person on your right, and these are your beloved colleagues. You are going to graduate together. You are going to go out and you're going to get teaching positions. You're going to work together. You're going to shift the way education is done in our community towards empowerment, improvement. Call me Teddie. That's just fine with me. I see this as a learning community. I have a lot of experience and a lot of studies that I have done, but I engage you as a fellow learner in that ask me questions. And sometimes I'll say, yes, this is an answer, but sometimes I have to learn and go to that as well. Sometimes I'll say to you, look it up, figure it out, bring it back to class, and we'll engage in that. But questions will further all of us in our knowing and our knowledge. They're just fine. And there might be some content that's tricky along the way, so seek me out. I have office hours on Friday, but if Fridays don't work for you and it's something that you really need to understand for a paper or an exam coming up, give me a call or email me, and we will set up a time where we can engage so that you can have a better understanding of the information. Any questions?
So can I reflect, do the same reflection that we did with the first professor. So now I'm feeling an interesting mix of sort of pride. I chose this really amazing career to study, and responsibility. Like, oh dear, I can't just sit here and have this fed to me. I'm going to be I'm needing to be active. If I have questions, I'm going to have to ask them. I'm feeling some security because I've got co-journeyers here. But there's an interesting anxiety, and I'd love to talk about this too, because it's something we experience with WetheP. People want to be involved. They want to be self-actualized, but there is this internal, it's not I'm certainly not feeling I'm rejecting my new calling to be a nurse, but I'm feeling an anxiousness, and it's not necessarily negative, but it's definitely there, and I think that happens in all change agents. So how does a student or a person process through that and accept that without as much anxiety, or is anxiety just part of the package?
It is part of the package, but knowing what it is makes it a little better. We call it eustress in nursing. There's a certain amount of stress of just living.
Right.
If you didn't have stress, you wouldn't get up in the morning. You wouldn't worry about what I'm going to have for dinner. So there's a certain amount of stress. That's just the stress of going through life. And that's normal stress. It's good stress. We all need a certain level in order to be whole. So if people say, this is uncomfortable, I say, good. That means you're growing. Good. That's exactly what it's about.
And what if I'm sitting here and I've heard this from people, particularly students, because of the way that much of our education system is operating these days and has been, saying, but I don't want to have to work that hard. They're the expert. They've got the PhD or the MD or the RN. I don't want to have to work that hard. And by the way, I'm not sure that these two are as smart as I am, or this one's way smarter than I am, and there's no way she's going to waste her time with me.
So when people reflect those attitudes, that's classic domination system. The classic of how you grow up. You grow up to be blank slate. People are going to tell you what to do. People are going to tell you where to go. People are going to tell you the information to believe. And that's what becomes your norm. So when I encounter somebody who's grown up in a domination family, then they've gone to a domination school, and they maybe work for an organization that's really top down, very hierarchical, and not respecting. Instead of going, can't you see it? I'm merciful. And little steps, just little steps.
Right. Rather than
this.
just get over it, you'll love it in the end.
You can't.
Right.
This is the way
it is
you've
scary.
thought.
Right.
Well, this is the way. This is the only thing you've ever known.
And you've been taught, and you've been perhaps punished for not.
Yes.
Right.
So how would you know that there's a possibility? So those of us who know there's a possibility need to hold the hand and walk with somebody to the next step, the next options. It's not parenting, because parenting would say, you better do this, and
or else get over it.
Move into partnership, or else. Well, then you just showed me that
Figure
you're
it
still
out.
stuck in a domination. We don't use threats and shame and blame and fear, and you just don't use that.
What are the outcomes? What are the differences in outcomes then? In a domination society, again, a lot of societies do it that way. They believe that it works that way. What are the outcomes for both domination and partnership societies? What do we know?
Well, and I would guide you to Rianne's work, because she has studied all these cultures, and so there's a lot.
Rianne, we have interviewed, and I know you know this, and had a delightful interview. So I'd refer any viewers to check out our interview of Rianne Eisler.
Yeah, so she does a beautiful job describing that. In healthcare, though, I can say that, because this is a huge answer, or I can bring it down in healthcare. If people stick within a domination system, they're very passive recipients of healthcare versus stepping up and becoming full partners. What's my body doing? Can I describe it to you? Can I tell you that this medicine works this way? And if you say, well, no, it can't, I can say, I'm telling you the reality. When I take this medicine, this is how I feel. And so I become a partner to help the provider understand what's going on. That would be a partnership. Whereas domination system, I would just go, they know, I don't know.
And
I'll
you might,
take it,
and the patient may be at risk for not communicating something critical to the practitioner. That could be devastating.
Domination thwarts quality and safety, and quality and safety are a huge focus in healthcare right now.
It reminds me of going back to the story of my son. When he was of course, in the hospital for quite a while, and I see in NICU and then special care. And I was doing as all freaky mothers do, and I was getting my MD online or my RN online, but I still was trying to research and have medical people in my family. But I independently found a certain type of nutrition that was very new in the research, but was available. And I just brought it up to the doctors and really was feeling somewhat timid to even do that. Like, who am I to say that? And I think I just said, have you heard of this? Because he wasn't at that moment thriving with what they were able to produce for him. And at the time it was too early to produce much breast milk for him. And the doctor, to my shock, said, "Tell me more."
See,
And they used
yes,
it. He knew
yes.
nothing about it, and they used it. It blew my mind.
In the early 1900s, it was very easy for physicians to know everything there was to know.
Because there was not as much to know.
There wasn't as much knowledge.
Got it.
Now the studies are being released every day.
Okay, this
on
is
a
powerful.
rapid,
There's so much to
rapid,
know.
rapid
No one
pace.
person
No
or
one.
professional
So we need the
or
team.
boss.
So the physician's not covering what the physical therapist should know. The nurse knows their studies. The social worker knows their studies.
We didn't have physical
We have
therapists in the early
to work
1900s,
together. No, and it wasn't. People were complex, but the care wasn't complex.
Right.
The care was, well, we're going to open the windows, and we're going to change the linen, and we're going to bring hot soup, and we're going
Cross
to
our fingers.
to, yeah,
and pray,
basically,
whatever.
basically.
Yeah, so this is interesting, and of course the mortality rate was less or lower, and it has increased, and yet there's this interesting dynamic going on. This would be fun to talk about too, that now I think women's mortality in the United States is actually going down somewhat. So what does partnered healthcare have to do with that or not?
Well, it's everything I am aiming towards, a system shift in healthcare, so that everyone at the table, and this is a metaphorical table obviously,
Sure.
but everyone at the table is considered a valued contributor to what we're going to do. And I really like the slogan we sometimes say of regarding patients is nothing about me without me, in that they need to be engaged instead of us deciding everything and coming and saying,
And
this
telling.
is what we're going to do. It's engaging the person in the dialogue and hearing the conversation, because they might have a missing piece of the puzzle that's just critical for us to know. It doesn't help for us to say, these are the medications that you're going to be, or a physician to go, these are the medications you need to be on. You go, great, I'll get them filled at the pharmacy.
And I'll be all better.
And you don't tell us that you don't have health insurance. So you go straight out the door and don't stop to pick up medications because we didn't know you didn't have coverage. We could have gotten the social worker involved and get you on coverage. You maybe don't stop, or you stop and you take your medicines at home, but you don't like how they make you feel, and so you don't take them. Perhaps you go home, take them home, and you go, was that a yellow one I took in the morning? I think it was a blue one I took in the morning. I can't read, so I think I'll use the yellow one. We never stop to ask you,
Right.
tell me about your reading, or can you read this to me? Can you read it
And
back
I might
to
be
me?
afraid to ask because you
Of
are so smart, and I
course.
feel stupid for
And
forgetting
you
what
haven't
you
been
told me.
invited. You have not been invited and respected to bring your full knowledge of your situation to the table.
So I could talk to you all day about this because it feels like such a missing link still, in spite of you and many others really that are doing some amazing partnered healthcare and in communities. Truly, there's a million questions I have, but I want to get to some of your more specific work in this area. And one is that you just launched a academic journal, I
did.
believe. Now explain this journal, because it's
Yeah.
entirely, well, I shouldn't say it's entirely different, it's an academic journal.
It is.
With peer review, and yet it's got different twists that not all journals have.
So one of the things,
And the name of it is the Journal
the
for
journal is called the Interdisciplinary
Interdis-
Journal
I'm sorry.
of Partnership Studies. And the interesting thing about paradigms and how paradigms work in systems is paradigms are replicated or maintained through certain structures. One of them is your education teaches it, so it's replicated through teaching. Oftentimes, very powerful community organizations like faith organizations or other sort of community recognized organizations sometimes affirm that paradigm. But in the world of the academy, oftentimes knowledge is generated, and then it goes through this really rigorous process, which is good. You don't want stuff that doesn't work
Right,
out there,
right.
cloaked as knowledge. But then it goes into a place like a journal, or it's presented at a professional conference that is exclusive, in that if I'm on the outside and I'm not a member of the academy, how will I subscribe to the journal? Maybe I could, but it will cost me you know, maybe $100 a year. I don't have that.
Right.
So how am I going to get access to the most recent research if it's only in the journal?
Why do I need it? If I mean, can I just say, oh, good, all the medical professionals, or all, in this case, I know you're publishing more than just medical professionals. If they've got it, whew, I'm off the hook. Why do I need to see it?
Well, how about a care provider in a developing nation that doesn't have access to the journals? They might still be practicing based on the best knowledge they have, which might be 10 years old or 15 years old. Things are changing so fast.
Right.
That's not adequate.
Right.
We have to all be up on the leading edge of the knowledge that's being released. So therefore, knowledge needs to be sort of accessible. So that's how we designed our journal.
So you're breaking some rules. You're not the first, but you're early in this whole new paradigm of making academic research open to everyone.
Anybody can read it. It'll be, it's online. The journal is online, so anybody can pull it up. Now, that we're not sacrificing rigor to make that possible. We have a blinded, peer-reviewed process, reviewed by experts in the field. So depending on which papers come through, it'll be reviewed by people who are experts in the field. We do have a scholarship section, so it's people who are going to be following traditional sort of pathway of how you develop papers, and we're going to have a Voices of the Community section, so that people who are maybe living these new ways of knowing out in the community can say, and this is what's happening. When I applied it, this is what happened.
Interesting. So why is that so important in an academic journal?
It's important because it's been not traditional in an academic journal. It hasn't been a traditional piece. And I'm a big believer that you cannot have just the generation of knowledge without the application of knowledge. It's a yin-yang. It's absolutely a yin-yang. If you're out there practicing and you're not grounded in the most current knowledge, you're practicing in a way that might potentially be harmful or might not have as many benefits as driven by the current studies. If you're developing the current studies and they're not getting used, what is the point? What's the point of
so
the large federal
if the current
grants
study
funding
says
something?
give it the yellow pill, and the yellow pill isn't being taken in practical life, then you've got an issue. There's a disconnect there.
If people think that, okay, this is the best science, we know the yellow pill works, we're getting it out, the providers understand that, and it takes oftentimes up to 17 years for knowledge to become widespread practice.
17 years.
So this is a long time of that to always get out and get filtered in.
So are you cutting down that? Are you trying to maybe cut down that 17 years to something less?
Just trying to make available knowledge that somebody like you can go, I found this new nutritional data. What do you think? You work with your physician as a partner, and they go, I hadn't seen that yet. Tell me more. Certainly, they understand how to critique literature and research. They are very good at that. But what did you find? They might not have stayed up late last night and seen that one report that was buried deep over here or over there. So I don't fault them for the knowledge is coming through so fast. So we need each other. We need to be with each other. So it's an open access. There is open medicine as a journal, and it's designed for the same purposes. So we're by no means the very first out of the gate, but we are a new step for the School of Nursing and the university.
And how are you finding your peers accepting this? Are they excited, or are they kind of waiting and seeing? Where's that at? Well, or were they a little bit like,
you get all people in response to innovation. You've got your early adopters who go, hoo-hoo, it's about time. You've got your early, your sort of middle range people who go, sounds good, but I'll wait and see who else does it. You've got your later middle range people who go, I need to see this for a while. You've got your laggards who's like, I don't believe in this at all, and I'm not going to go with it no matter what you show me. So
is that changing at all in medicine because of exactly what you're talking about? This doctor, this wonderful doctor that said, yeah, I want to hear more. It seems that this is changing.
It is changing.
So there is more. The 17 years may be a little bit compressed in terms of at least this partnered relationship with other information.
Oh, I think the partnership is on the move. I think it's just on the move.
Doctors
I just happen to be on the early edge of describing it and
Putting it
pushing
to,
it and
right.
giving words to it so
Right.
people can start to practice it.
Right.
But the new generations, the young generations coming out, I don't think we have even begun to tease out the shift, the human shift that has occurred because they're the internet generation.
Oh dear, it's unbelievable.
It's fabulous.
You
Fabulous.
teach on, isn't it? And you know this because you teach online. I mean, I think of my children, and I've been in technology for much of my career, and I've been a journalist. I mean, information is my deal.
Yeah.
My children are, every day they're teaching me things. I mean, it's humbling in a sense. So, and you teach students online. So tell us how that's gone and what you've seen as been the benefits or maybe the challenges of that.
Sure. We have 13 Doctor of Nursing practice programs at in the School of Nursing at the University of Minnesota. I coordinate one of them, which is the Doctor of Nursing Practice in Health Innovation and Leadership, which fits me perfectly.
You think?
Because I am an innovator to the core and believe in leadership and believe in systems thinking. And so, and our programs are online, so our students are scattered all over the country. And they come to campus right now 3 times a semester, but the rest of the time is online. And it's asynchronous studies, so that means they can log on at night if it works well for them, or early in the morning and before their kids wake up. It's whatever works well for their rhythm. It's an amazing way of learning. And I told you as a child, all things are connected. People make connections much faster in an online environment. It's just much faster. I think some people say, don't you miss relationships?
Right.
Isn't there?
But you aren't getting that
but you
fairly regularly.
are in a relationship. It's a different type of relationship. And so it gives people where you and I, as we're talking here, you are maybe guiding me in a way, and I think, shoot, I wanted to think about this, or and then I have to think, note to self, come back to what this. And so there's all this kind of chatter going on. And if I'm shy, I'm thinking, well, what maybe does she want to hear me say? And all my friends around me who are more extroverted are jumping in with their answers, and I'm not ready to quite formulate it. Online, all of those barriers and challenges are gone.
Interesting.
In that I have time to read and ruminate. My colleague said this. That guides me to look up over here and use this resource. And that I want to think deeper about that. And I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to journal on that. I'm going to really work this through in my thinking. Now I'll respond to you.
This is fascinating because the jig or the complaint about the internet, and I would be one that has said this, although I much agree with you, is that it's very reactionary, is that, it's sort of frontal lobe, I see something, I react to it. What you're saying, and it tracks with what we've seen in our case studies, that actually it enhances higher order thinking, which is deep brain thinking, which is more sustained, more thoughtful, more holistic, all kinds of important and really critical things for growth.
Now, it's important to understand there's a difference between online learning and a quick tweet. And so if people think online learning is a tweet, then they're missing that this is something totally, totally different.
Absolutely.
And the potential is just mind-blowing. Because as an innovator, you used to be able to discover all these different things in your field of study. So I would be able to innovate tons and tons of things in nursing. In the field of medicine, tons and tons of different ways of thinking in medicine, and tons of different ways of thinking in business. And now, because knowledge is being generated so quickly and moving so fast, innovation isn't occurring within one discipline. It's occurring in the space between different disciplines or different ways of thinking. So innovation is not occurring here, and it's not occurring here. It's occurring when you and I create space right here.
And then in a sense, it's also, and then it's filtering or engaging
Absolutely.
the two
Absolutely. And it's shared knowledge. I don't own it, you don't own it.
Right.
We own this.
Right. I love it. You so crystallize this all. We've just got a few more minutes, and I feel like, because I'm so fascinated, I have kind of pulled this. What else do you want to share with us? Is there anything else that we need to know? I mean, there's a lot we need to know.
Well, I would like to go back at you because your mission and your desire to see communities come together and really dig deep and work together to create innovation is spot on.
Thank you.
So as much as you might feel like I'm on the leading edge or the other's coming, it is going to be the way we'll do things. Or we will not make it.
I agree.
So
I agree.
this is our choice, similar to a domination or a partnership. If we stay in this top downs, only some people are important, others aren't, we are going to continue to replicate our current situation.
Is there an argument for the hierarchies in this? If I am a hierarchical thinker, how am I sold on the idea of this partnered and even things like this internet shared space, this shared growth through shared space, the space between? What's in it for me if I kind of like being the big boss and forgive me, not maybe boss, but just being the group that tells more than...
Well, there is a difference between leadership and hierarchy. So that's really important to understand that to be a leader doesn't mean that I have to be mean or cruel or harmful or limiting. That I might have more social influence or by the position I'm in have some more power, but that doesn't mean that I'm more important. That's really, really important to understand as the leader. I bring my skill set, which is leadership. You bring your skill set, which is how to fix my car. You bring your skill set, which is how to purchase the best vegetables for our neighborhood. None of those are more important, but I might be leading us to, will you fix the truck for the people who are growing the vegetables so we can all get what we need. I will lead
I'm
that.
seeing more of the I'm seeing more of the puzzle in whole, I think is what you're saying as a leader. I'm understanding more of the nuances that can improve our outcomes, and that's good for me as a leader.
Well, and it's always making those decisions. The leader is seeing the whole. That's the role of the leader. So I would use an example as a chief of a fire department. They maybe don't want to get down into micromanaging of this is what you say to somebody when you go to the house.
Right.
You know, why do that? Why? But certainly I want somebody in a 5-alarm fire to be saying, you go here and you do that.
Right. And if it's not happening, I want to be able to address it somehow.
And so if you've been in partnership with your employees and you work together, even in a crisis when you are calling the shots, they won't go, well, who's that person to tell me what to do? They'll say, oh yeah, I trust them.
Yes.
This person doesn't ask me to do things that they're not willing to pitch in and work with. They have the common good at heart. I will follow them. So I'm preparing my leadership students right now with a partnership way of being. And they're going out and talking to their colleagues in the other 12 programs. And the colleagues recently, some of them have started coming to me and saying, how do I get ready for your leader?
Interesting.
Because I want to
How do
follow
I adjust
them. They said,
the
I want to follow them.
Wonderful.
They are so sparked, so engaged, so strong in their vision for how we can move things forward. I want to be able to follow them. They don't want to necessarily shift and become a leader.
Interesting.
But they say, I want to do this.
I want to work with that type of leader.
I want to work with that type of leader. Now, this is student to student.
That's remarkable. Tell me, just give us some, students are exciting. How are students taking this, other than their peers? What's different about this generation of students? I suspect there's a little bit something different. They've seen a little bit of this. They've seen more glimmers, perhaps.
Well, they don't see knowledge in boxes like we do, or buckets.
Right.
So it's a very odd idea that they would have to go across campus to learn something about chemistry if they're over here in the agriculture area, because they're so used to looking up whatever they want to know at their fingertips, and everything's connected and everything's available. So that way of bucket prioritizing is foreign. Also, the hierarchy thinking is not as strong in them. So they're when they encounter a domination system, they're like, I don't want to work here, and they don't.
Right.
So it behooves us, those of us that are a little more gray than the others, to realize we are not going to have people who want to work for us. Or
They
people
almost
who
come into college a little more self-actualized, I think, than we did. Am I getting this right?
um,
A little bit more aware of their power?
I
or
don't think we can
no?
ever make huge generalizations, because there's certainly people who grew up in abusive families,
Right,
or
right.
you know, things that limit their power. But
As a generation.
as a generation, I would say I am so incredibly hopeful. I watch them, I listen to them, and I think you are decades ahead of where I was in your understanding of how we are one system.
You are hopeful. This is so exhilarating to listen to you. I really appreciate everything you've shared, and we definitely want to hear more, and we want to partner more so we can learn how you do it and apply those methods in our work, so we're all connecting those spaces in between much better. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
Dr. Teddie Potter.